Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar. We're here with a badass blues player from England. He's got a great accent. That's so cliched, I know. But only because my wife has an accent like that, so I love it. Anyway, we're here with Matt Schofield, who I'm sure you probably know. He's also one of the sweetest guys around. He's from England. He's a member of the British Blues Hall of Fame. Guitar and Bass magazine rated him in the top 10 British blues guitarists of all time, ranking him alongside Eric Clapton and Peter Green. He's from Manchester, and he began playing guitar at age 12 when his dad relocated to America. Before he left, his dad gave him a B.B. King video, and he was hooked from that point on. Later, when he was in California with his dad, he showed him B.B. King, Albert Collins, and Stevie Ray Vaughan on video, and that only amplified it. He did his first gig, which we're going to talk about this, at age 13. And at 18, he left the beautiful countryside and moved down to gritty London. There, as a sideman, he was able to hone his skills as backing a great variety of experienced and well-known artists in the British blues scene, playing with visiting American artists as well as touring internationally. By age 25, he was running his own band projects, incorporating classic jazz, funk, soul, and rock into the blues he loves. And soon after that, he found himself trading licks with his heroes like Robben Ford and Buddy Guy. He's released 9 solo albums. He's got another one coming out in the next couple of months. Is that safe to say, or next few months?
Yeah, well, we're recording it shortly, so yeah, hopefully in the next few months. Certainly before the end. Certainly before fall, as you say. Before autumn.
Before autumn. Yeah. And he'll be on here to talk about that when he comes out with it. He's got a 2-Rock signature amplifier, a Matt Schofield branded SOV overdrive pedal, a line of Matt Schofield branded Kurt Mangan strings, a Hal Leonard instructional DVD, and a Hal Leonard guitar tab collection. He's the British Blues Awards Guitarist of the Year for 2010, 2011, and 2012, which earned him an induction into the British Blues Hall of Fame. In 2011, Anything But Time, his album was voted Blues Album of the Year by Mojo Magazine, and he's in the, again, Guitar and Bass Magazine's top 10 British blues guitarists. Matt, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for having me.
And he says my name. I love how English people say my name. They say Craig. It's lovely.
As opposed to Craig or something.
Yeah, they say, everybody here says Craig.
Yeah, Craig.
Yeah, this is a true story, man. And I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about you, but this is kind of funny. I was married, my first wife, when I was a young kid, and her mother, one Christmas, gives me a mug that says Greg.
Greg. Yeah.
And I look at it, and I'm like, I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Why don't you put, like, Michael on there?
So all along, she thought that was it.
No, I think she knew my name. It's like, I'm like, that should have been the sign, man. I should have run
maybe.
Right there. But anyway, we live and learn. Anyway, man, you started playing guitar at 12 and gigging at 13. How the hell did you get so good in a year? And what got you playing in the first place?
Well, I didn't get so good, but I got enough to, some of it was youthful ignorance, really, so I'd always had a guitar around from probably, when I was like probably 8 or 9, we got a 3/4 size nylon string, so that was my first experience and there was a guy that came into school every week, and he showed us the cowboy chords, open D, G. And we played 1-chord songs like London's Burning in the round, like a little group of us in school. So that was the extent of my formal education in guitar. But that was probably 8 or 9 years old. And then I didn't really touch it too much until I started listening to more of my dad's blues records and stuff, So then I've been listening to BB for quite a bit. He was one of my favorites, even before I considered playing it, And then so I was already like listening to the blues a lot, I knew the sound of it. And so then that video you mentioned earlier that my dad left behind I used to watch it every morning before school, and I desperately wanted to do what BB was doing, but I just didn't know where to start. It's like, I'm probably 11 or 12 at that point. and I'm in the southwest of England at that point, in the countryside in the Cotswolds. And how do you begin to be B.B. King? It was just too much of a leap to make, you know. And actually, his bass player at that time, Russell Jackson, on this video, I loved his playing as well. And I just got to meet Russell last year, actually. Hopefully, we'll get to do something together. But
that's really cool. How did you get to meet him? That's pretty cool.
We were on the same festival in Vegas last year, you know. So
did you tell him?
Yeah, I told him the story, and then he came, checked out my gig, and so we exchanged details. And he said, "I think we're going to do something together at some point." And I said that would be great. So that's in a future plan as well. But
awesome.
He's an amazing bass player. But so he was like, I thought, well, maybe I can't be BB, maybe I could be his bass player, though, you know. So I actually got a little cheap bass first before I got an electric guitar, and and I was messing around with that, but it was still BB, you know. And then you know, my dad, who had moved to California by that point, I would spend the summers there. So that summer, we're talking summer of 1990, so I'm 12, about to turn 13. I get there, and he knows I've been interested in BB and loving that. And I think he'd sent me a cassette copy of Journeyman by Eric Clapton, which was a new record at that point. So that would have been 89 into 90. And so I really like that. But on the side B of the cassette, he'd put Stevie Ray doing Voodoo Child. And I was like, well, Eric Clapton album's good, but what is going on here? Like, all over the thing, you know? So when I got to California that year, I was like, who's that guy? And so he just happened to have taped off MTV or something when they showed music back in the day, and showed stuff like B.B. King.
Does MTV still exist?
I don't even know. I mean, I don't think it has any music on there. I think it's all reality shows, isn't it now, or something like that.
Wow.
So. But yeah, but back then you'd get. In fact, it was this segment, and Herbie Hancock was the presenter of the segment. You know,
that's pretty cool.
So it was some footage from New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival in '88 or whatever. Yeah, and so it was Stevie Ray bringing out B.B. King and Albert Collins to play, and that, when I saw that really was it. I was like, I got to do this. And there was something about Stevie playing with BB that made it just seem more feasible, you know, because Stevie had a way of, I'm not even talking culturally or racially or you know, like, but Stevie had a way of putting it together that made it much more accessible, you know. Like, BB was just too majestic, you know. It was,
maybe the age?
Age as well, yeah, you know. So it's probably all those things of being able to relate to somebody making you feel like you could do it too, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I never thought, whenever I watched BB, I never thought I'd be able to do that, you know. But with Stevie, I was like, well, maybe I could do that, you know. So there was something about it, you know. And so we watched that over and over again. My dad, you know, showing me other stuff, and he has a great vinyl blues record collection, which I'd already been digging through. But the catalyst was that video, and then Stevie died about 2 weeks later, you know. So like that was that summer, and then he was gone, you know. Yeah. And so there was a little part of my just turned 13 the week before, you know. That was like, why I got to do this now, you know, like in the kind. So as I say, that youthful ignorance, or that kind of thing when you're a young teenager, where you're not really concerning yourself with not being able to do something, you know, you're just like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I went back to school in September.
Was your dad a player?
No, but he
just enthusiast.
He had a guitar around. He's got like one lick that he can play, one blues turnaround, you know.
But he plays the shit out of it, I bet, right?
He does. I haven't heard him do it in a while, but I remember him saying that a guy showed him on night shift at when he was working at Massey Ferguson or something, when he was like 18 or 19. This guy showed him this blues turnaround on night shift they were both working on, and that's his only lick, you know. But I will say he did. he listens to music like a musician, and it's a very intimate experience for him. And before he moved to the US when I was younger, he had his little kind of home office type study room with his reel-to-reel tape machine. And he used to listen to a lot of stuff on reel-to-reel and on headphones, and I would see him in his little study listening with his eyes shut, like deeply, deeply engrossed in this music. And I think even just part of, being fascinated by what he was clearly getting out of it, how important and how deeply he was listening, fascinated me. And so I always say he listens to music like a musician, and he would be. He taught me how to listen, not to music, which is to me a whole half of being a good player is how well you listen and how deeply you listen to stuff, and how intimate you are with that's what you end up sounding like, so he would say, listen to what the bass player's doing here, listen to the drummer, listen to, and look at how Albert Collins plays with the capo, and like it really sort of. And he even said, next year when you're back, I'll get this Buddy Guy record out. It's called Stone Crazy. It's my favorite Buddy Guy.
That's a live record, like 5 or 6 cuts only, right?
That's the one. Yeah.
Oh man, that's in France. I think recorded in France.
It is. That's my favorite Buddy Guy record. But
amazing.
He said, next year I'll play you this Buddy Guy record, but you're not ready for it yet. It was kind of fun like that. But that
also was real nice to keep your, the trips over here, like anticipation and meaning, and it was like something special you guys got to share.
Yeah,
which is really
cool.
Of
an unconventional setup of just spending a bit of the year in California from the age of 11, I think it was. So it was. It did make it sort of fun and bonding.
Well, that was your special thing. Yeah, that's good. As a father, I can tell you that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure all of this is deeply rooted in that being some kind of bonding and relationship. I think the fact that I do any of this at all, I'm sure, goes deeply down into him having been over the other side of the world for a lot of my childhood.
Yeah.
If we were to psychoanalyze me about it,
Well, no, because I thought that, and I didn't want to say it because I don't know. That touches people in different ways, but I would say it's a very strong part of it. Yeah, for sure, it has to be. And, it was always fine. Like, it wasn't like, he left me or something. I never even thought about it like that. I was actually like, cool, going to go to California, Yeah. Well, it was what it was, Nobody had an idea. Yeah. Everybody had something fucked up in their childhood for the most normal people anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, at least,
but that's definitely part of the deep-rooted reason, some kind of connection there. And, So I got back to school in that September, and it was like, right, I'm starting a band, by the way, to my friends. And, so one of my friends was, I'll be the bass player. And the guy goes, I'll play drums. And I was lucky to have very, very supportive music teacher at school, although I didn't he was a classical guy, so I didn't have any lessons with him, but he would be kind enough to let us use the music room in the music department, where they had a drum kit and an amp, because I didn't have any of that. I still just had that nylon string 3/4 size. So I was going home and I was playing every night on the nylon string, and then after school, and he'd even let us go in on the weekends to use the room so that we could just jam. So we just played for hours and hours and hours and hours, like these 13-year-olds playing blues,
That's
so
awesome,
so eventually, the first gig was the following April, and it was actually part of a school concert, and it was like all the orchestra, and then there's the 4 of us up in the corner with amps all, and we went out and bought terrible cheap suits, so it looked like Eric Clapton or something with those 1990s suits, a big baggy shoulder, 13-year-olds all dressed like that. And so we did a bunch of songs of that. So that was the first official performance. And then the following I think following term we put on an after school concert, like a full show, 2 hours, and so yeah, we just started doing it. So it wasn't that we were great, but I think I didn't have that much to, like, I was listening to the same sort of half a dozen records, like over and over and over again. So it wasn't that I knew lots, but I had enough of a vocabulary, having learned or figured out the pentatonic scale. I actually figured that out from trying to learn the intro to Voodoo Child, because that is just the E minor pentatonic, and it was like, oh, well, that kind of sounds like the other things that people play as well. So once I had that down, I was like, oh, you can improvise within these notes, and it sounds like, it can start to sound like BB, or it can start to sound like Albert Collins, or whatever you do. So it was more a case of already being pretty familiar with the sound of the music quite deeply, and then being able to pull those few notes out of the guitar and make them sound like that as well. So it wasn't that I knew a lot. I just knew how to use what vocabulary I had, And if you think about someone like Albert King, who I quickly got onto, because my dad's like, well, if you like Stevie, that's great and everything, but you really need to listen to Albert King, because that's where Stevie's getting a lot of what he does. So then I was straight down that path as well. And, Albert's vocabulary is very small, and yet he makes the most incredible music out of this small vocabulary. So I think learning from records from those guys gives you a really solid foundation of how to create music out of quite little information, Yeah, and sure. That's we live in a different world than that now. But I feel really privileged in a way to have grown up with that, with not being able to go on YouTube and look at somebody's lessons, not having any more information than half a dozen records, and then I would go back to the US and tape onto a cassette couple more vinyl records of my dad's, and bring them back and then listen to them all year, So it's sort of it's like a slow learning, but you get a very deep foundation put in there, I think. So, and then playing every day, all the time, about every day after school, and all weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we would just be jamming and playing, and then we started playing locally more out of that, So.
When did you finally get an electric?
I got that, I think I'm going to say, so I did that the first couple of gigs I did, just at school, were on the school electric guitar, because I didn't have one for that first year. I was still going home on that nylon string. And then the next year, when I was back out in California, we went and we found a used, like American Standard Strat. And so I was like, boom, got a real Strat now, So.
Did you still have that guitar?
I don't. No, I don't. I still have the nylon string though, so which is funny. That's in my mum's attic at her house. And at one point, I mean, this is ridiculous, but I was, I didn't have a cutaway, and I was, wanting to get up to the high notes, and so I cut a cheese wedge shape out of the lower bow. So this poor thing's got like a. Like
a gaping hole.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I got up to I hacksawed a cheese wedge shape out of this nylon string so I could get up to that IB or something.
There you go. That's hilarious, man. Wow. Side question: was there in the UK, in the smaller towns?
Yeah.
When you were growing up, was stuff like weed around?
Weed?
Yeah.
No, God, no. Yeah, so it was, it wasn't something that ever figured, but the pub was, so that was the culture very much. The town I grew up in was only a few thousand people. It's right in the Cotswolds. It's beautiful, but a few thousand people in 8 pubs. So.
Yeah, but they're all probably making a lot of money. That's just the culture there.
Yeah, that's where you would go and hang out and gig, so we do gigs in pubs as well,
Sure.
So.
I asked because I know my wife told me the same thing. We're a little older than you, but she was never exposed to that as a kid. Whereas me, growing up in New York City, that was around. I mean, I remember 10, 11, I don't know, 12, seeing it. So I was just curious. And that it, you know, I didn't think it was there, which I think ultimately is a good thing.
Yeah, it never even crossed my mind, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a feature, you know.
You could tell when I asked you the question, like, weed?
Yeah,
see that.
No sort of connection with those days. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And I apologize. I didn't mean to
it's a curious question. I've never thought about it, but no, it's just not a thing.
Yeah, so. Which honestly I think is a good thing because, like I said, being exposed to it at that young age, there's no upside. Sure. There's zero upside to that, man. So once you had outgrown, I'm assuming you outgrew your town, and you said, "Hey, I got to go to London." Yeah,
well, we were playing locally, and there was one cool place where I grew up. It has a Air Force base nearby. It was a Royal Air Force base, but it was occupied. Well, it was rented to the U.S. Air Force at the time. Still is a little bit or something, and it's got the longest runway in Europe. Oh, wow. So the B-52, and we're talking this period is like the first Gulf War period, you know. Mm. So it was quite active at the time because the B-52 bombers would land there on their way from the U.S. to go and bomb Iraq and Kuwait at the time, you know. So that was the stopover, and because they could land at this. So we're talking out in the picturesque countryside, and then there's this huge runway and Air Force base with B-52 bombers parked up. So there was a lot of U.S. servicemen stationed just 5 miles down the road, and they had like a rec room for those guys. And it was under U.S. jurisdiction, so the pubs used to close at 11 o'clock in England at that point, but they could drink later on the airbase. So we started doing gigs at the U.S. Air Force Base because they first of all they were into blues, and they knew the stuff we were playing, and then they were up partying before they're going out flying missions the next day. Those guys could I'm like, you're going to fly a plane tomorrow, you know? It's pretty crazy. And so then we'd play there quite a bit, you know, and so that was like one of the coolest gigs. And then what happened is I did a couple of longer stints. Once I finished school at 18, I did a couple of longer stints over here in the US, just cruising around with a friend of mine, James Henderson, who's the older brother of Johnny Henderson, who's been my longtime organ player and is on all my records. We all went to school together. You know, I went to school with Johnny, but James, his older brother, is a guitar player, and so we did like a couple of missions around the US, just driving around in an old Chevy van and going and seeing gigs, and drove all the way from Northern California to Texas and back.
Wow, that's really a good adventure.
Yeah, and I did that with another friend. So we did it a couple of times. I did it with John as well, who was the drummer in my band from school. You know, just like music junkies, just out driving around, going to gigs, and actually saw one of the most memorable ones on the second time I did that was seeing Storyville, David Grissom's.
Oh yeah.
Time I saw them at Antone's in 1996, you know, so
that's really cool.
It was interesting that David put us in touch for to have this podcast, because that was, you know, one of the highlights of those experiences, you know. So to see the original Storyville lineup like that. So.
Isn't it weird how shit like that works? So now you're playing in Italy.
Yeah, this summer with
David. Yeah. How so when you're driving and seeing him playing in Storyville, that's not going through. If someone would have said, "Hey, you know, just hang in there. In 20 years, you'll be playing with this guy on stage in Italy." Yeah,
it is. It's amazing, you know. Full. So there's a lot of things like that. In fact, I was just telling my girlfriend a story the other night. That same year, actually, we went and saw Robben Ford with the Blue Line, you know. And I was right down the front, and I'm like 18, you know, and I'm like right down the front, just mesmerized by this. And he comes over right at the end of the gig, and he just gives me his pick. He makes a beeline for me for whatever reason and puts his pick in my hand, and I'm like, wow, that's super cool. So I told him, you know, I've got to know Robben quite a bit over the last few years, and I told him this story. It's like, you for some reason you came to me, and I must have been watching him a certain way and gave me the pick. And Robben's like, yeah, I probably knew, man.
That's really cool.
But things come full circle like that. But we're talking over 22 years ago. All this stuff, and
very weird.
So maybe I was paying attention, obviously, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's weird how destiny and fate and all that stuff kind of works sometimes.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't ascribe. I try not to ascribe too much meaning to anything. I tend to think of the world as being largely chaotic myself, right, rather than preordained in some way. But it's certainly nice. Those are the super cool things when it does come back around and you find yourself being able to tell the story of how much that meant to you, that moment, to the person in a completely different context when you've both been playing together. So it's really. That's
really nice. I got Robben coming on the show in a few weeks or maybe.
Oh no!
Yeah. Okay, so you decide I got to go to London, got to get out of Dodge. I'm the big fish in a small pond right now.
Yeah, so me and James, going back to that, we start going down. He finds a jam session in London, which luckily turns out to be the jam session in London for blues, and it's where like touring artists would stop, and And I'd actually been considering going to the US after those trips, getting a visa and somehow, or through my dad who was already based out there, and sort of pursuing it there. But what happened is I started going to this jam, and before I'd even moved to London, we were driving down. I couldn't even drive. I didn't have a license at that point. When we started going, I wasn't old enough to drive or hadn't passed my test. So James would drive us to London. And
how far was that? How far is the Cotswolds from London?
It's about an hour and a half.
Oh, okay, so not that bad.
I mean, it's a completely different part of the country, but it's much smaller there. So you drive an hour and a half, and it's a different world,
Yeah.
So we went. We'd go every Monday to this jam and got to know the house band. And so before I hadn't necessarily thought about moving to London, but I got offered a gig by a harmonica player, great harmonica player, one of the best I've ever worked with, a guy called Lee Sankey. And he said, would you like to join my band? I need a guitarist, And so I was like, yeah, great. So my first gig, sort of professionally, if you want to call it that, and in London was at the 100 Club, which is a legendary venue in London that's still going just about. They have to save it every now and again, from a lot of development going on there. But everybody's played there, from Louis Armstrong onwards, Sex Pistols.
The 100 Club?
The 100 Club, yeah. It's one of the only surviving, like, really, truly original venues that, everybody, people got their start there. It was like where the whole punk thing came out, but back in the day, there's pictures on the wall of the Stones with B.B. King and everybody. It's pretty legendary place. So that was my first gig in London. So at the time, I'm like,
that's pretty damn good.
Just turning 19 or something, and I'm like, okay, this is it. I've done it. This is great. It's like from that perspective at the time, I was in a band in a professional band in London playing at the 100 Club. So little did I know that I'd still play at the 100 Club 20 years later with my band. So, but that's the music industry for you. But so then I ended up moving to London and staying there rather than coming to the US, which could have been an option that perhaps I should have taken. But I tend not to look back with regrets. It's just is what it is. So that seemed great at the time because all of a sudden I was off to the races. Like, great, I'm here in London and I got a gig, And,
I give you a lot of credit for just coming over to the U.S. in general. That's a pretty bold move for someone your age at the time.
You know what? It's really funny as well. Like, because I spoke. So like I say, me and James, and then me and a friend John did it again the following year, and
that was his brother.
Yeah, there was James is Johnny, my organ player's brother, and so we just came out and we just bought an old 1984 Chevy van, and we just kind of, and there's, bear in mind, no internet, no cell phones. This is 1995, and we just got a bunch of maps and just drove around the US for like 2 months, and nothing booked in advance. In fact, we sort of would schedule things by the gigs that we knew was happening. So it's like, okay, we've got to be in Austin by this date, you know, and then just drive around, staying and pulling the van into like campsites and then the odd motel, but nothing booked. I can't imagine doing that. I wouldn't do that now, you know, but for some reason we just ventured off into the, I'm amazed my mum, I'm sure she was beside herself, to be honest, you know, like wondering where the hell I was, you know, because it was, maybe find a phone box and make a call, you know. So.
And you were sleeping in the van, I'm assuming.
Sleeping in the van, yeah. We had like a pull-out thing, you know, two level in the back of this. You know, it was like a pretty cool Chevy camper type thing. So, but 1984 van, you know. So,
that's really cool. Yeah, I give you a lot of credit. I think that took a lot of guts. But some of that,
I wouldn't do it now, you know.
Right. Well, some of that's that ignorance that you talked about.
It is, yeah.
And it's good. It's kind of like I've seen a lot of that in business, where I've seen somebody that comes in and doesn't have any preconceived notions about anything, and all of a sudden the guy comes in and like just crushes it, and he, like, by all rights he quote shouldn't, but because he was just really determined and didn't have any, you know, I can't do this, you're not supposed to do it this way, or, you know, it just works.
And yeah, just didn't question things, you know. So yeah, I'd be much more reserved about things these days, you know. So as probably as you find out what can go wrong, but we didn't, you know, we weren't thinking about that. We just had the best time. That's like I say, I did it twice, you know. So went back again the following year with another friend and did it. And but it was I feel really blessed to have caught the end of that time, pre-internet, you know, and especially you know, some of the experiences, say seeing Storyville and Austin, and I also saw Robben and the Blue Line with David Grissom sitting in with them at the Steamboat in Austin on that, you know. I mean,
that's cool.
We're talking like ridiculous gigs in legendary clubs, you know, and stuff in LA and you know, just amazing, you know. So.
That's right, and you just mentioned Grissom's the one who hooked this up. That's kind of funny. Wow, I marvel at this stuff. Honestly, I really do, because I'm so in awe about all these dots that it's sort of a small world at that point. And actually, I got to say, David Grissom, my first US tour. I mean, so I've been a fan of him for years. So and he's super cool. Like my first US tour, so 2010, I was playing in Austin with my band at the Saxon, and nobody knows who I am at all, you know. And David Grissom came out to hear me. And so I walk into the club, and there's like 3 people sat in there, and it's one of the best guitar players I've ever heard, David Grissom, with 2 of his friends, and like that's the audience, and I'm like, oh my god, I have to be good, don't I? I you know, it's like really, it's like a private concert for David Grissom. Oh my god! But he was cool enough to come out and you know, took the time to do that. So. So this concert's going to be really, really nice when we're all in Italy together, because it's the first time I've been able to really do something like that with him, although we have played together with when he was out with Robben a couple of years, so it was all 3 of us up for a couple of numbers. That's quite a moment to find yourself stood on the stage. Literally, I was in between, in the middle of Robben Ford on one side and David Grissom on the other. I was like, all right, well, this is pretty serious. yeah. But that's because you know, I don't think they were thinking that. You know, you were just one of the, you're a peer at that point, you know.
Well, that's lovely to think that, but you know, there's a part of you that never, you know, that never changes. You know, like and all these guys, you know, and the time I've spent, I've met a lot more guys that were my heroes, and I played with, and a lot of the others were. I never even saw live, you know, so let alone got to meet them or play with them, you know. They were gone by the time I was old enough to go to concerts. So I never saw Stevie, like say, he was gone 2 weeks after I discovered him, you know, and Albert Collins was gone, and Albert King. But I mean, I can honestly say that all those influences, they're integral to my life. You know, it's not a trivial thing for me. I mean, those guys have made me the person I am beyond music. You know, they've all that music has dictated the path that my life has taken. You know, so that never goes away. Just the importance of they're giants. You know.
Yeah. I think it's just so cool how all this shit works. It boggles my. Yesterday I talked to a guy in Romania who's like the top blues player there, and he got to me. He's a fan of Jim Campolongo.
Oh yeah.
And his PR person sent him the interview, and then they talked to each. It was just it just amazes me. Like you said, it's a small freaking world, man. Yeah,
man. I just saw Jim Campolongo last Monday when I was in New York.
In New York, yeah. He's
my girlfriend. We went. We've got a free Monday night. We always go and see Jim at Rockwood. Man. He plays every Monday, and I love his drummer Josh Dion as well. So he's one of my favorite contemporary drummers. I must say that guy's amazing.
So finally, then you decide that you are going to move to America. What was the trigger?
Well, that's much later. That when I finally that's only been the last 3 years, So what happened is once I get my own band going when I'm 25, and that's again, none of this is by any grand design or grand plans. It's like I started doing some gigs under my own name.
Now wait a minute. Now if I could always say, how the hell do you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know if it is or not. I don't really. I'm sort of like
my part,
your part. Okay, I get you.
I'm not making any great career.
You have no involvement in the decision making, at least.
Yeah, it's just everything has been finding myself.
Yeah.
In a time of okay, well I've landed a gig, doing my own thing, and so I started. Johnny, who I went to school with, one of the most incredible musicians, and we just played together last week again, as we do whenever we can. And he'd been playing organ and really getting into real organ playing the bass on the organ, So and then Evan Jenkins, the drummer, the first gig I ever did with him was when I just moved to London. It was a wedding gig, and I came home and said to my housemate at the time, I think I just found my drummer. I just played this gig, and it just felt so good. So then when I started getting little gigs myself in London, I called those guys, and we started doing the organ trio thing, And
man, I think that adds, when you have a keyboard, it adds so much to especially a blues band.
Yeah, and for me, I never really was like that into doing, although I do it quite a bit more these days from a logistical point of view and financial reason, but I was never that into doing power trio with bass and drums, and because that pushes you down a more blues rock path, I find, and now I was more into the swinging side of things. In a way, it was like the organ trio. I could almost be B.B. King, but without the 8-piece band, because there's no way I could have an 8. But there was more to sit on top of,
Yeah.
And then Johnny, really, I mean, I can just glance at him out of the corner of my eye for a millisecond, and he knows to follow me or do, it's like the rapport, the chemistry is developed over many years, and we have all the same frames of reference. So he, actually with his brother James, so we were listening to all the guitar players, and so Johnny was sort of force-fed a diet of all the great keyboard players that played with the great guitar players, more so than starting out with, like, say, Jimmy Smith and Jimmy McGriff. His organ playing was first sort of coming from, hearing Reese Winans play with Stevie, or Jim Pugh with Robert Cray, or, James Toney with B.B. King, or whatever, the guys that we got to see and hear back then. So Bill Boblets, who played with Robin's Blue Line, so Johnny came out of that first. So he really backs guitar players amazingly well, and actually he's doing quite a bit of stuff with Kirk Fletcher now. So,
oh yeah, Kirk's a great player.
Yeah, so
he's in like Switzerland, I think.
He is, yeah, but he's just been making a record with Johnny playing organ and organ bass as well, because and he'll tell you the same thing. Johnny just knows how to play with a guitar player like nobody else. And so then you've got the cool thing of the bass. He can follow his own harmony with the bass line, if you know what I mean. It becomes very, very open to improvisation, because you've got one guy playing the bass and adding the chords to it, and it's just a super cool way of playing that I really enjoy still. So that's a bit of a digression on what we were saying. So in I'd started touring with that band in Europe, and we were putting out records, but I couldn't come to the US until 2010 because I'm sure a lot of listeners who are American don't, and they would have no reason to know about just how difficult it is to get a working visa for the US, and if you don't do it properly and you try and sneak over here, you'll be banned for 10 years. So
is that what they do? They ban you for 10 years?
Oh, it's a 10-year ban. If I was caught working without a valid, just deported and that's it, So I know, I know of stories, especially with Canadians who haven't realized just what's at stake and they've nipped over the border because it's just a drive over and done a gig in Buffalo and got busted, and that's it. So your career's over in the US for 10 years. Or
10 years, maybe. Wow.
So the visa process is very, very, very expensive, very long, and you're not guaranteed getting one at the end of it. But you have to have immigration lawyers and all this kind of thing. So that's why I was touring all over the world, and I did Canada in 2007. Montreal Jazz Festival, because they don't require artist visas for their festivals, so that it's easy for international acts to visit, But I couldn't get into the US until, basically, although my dad's a US citizen, I didn't.
Yeah, why didn't that help you?
That doesn't count for anything, really, in terms of me being able to work here. He wasn't a citizen when before I was 21. He was still on a green card working here, and so. If he'd have been a citizen before I was 21, I could have got dual as a dependent child, but he was only on a green card. And
are you dual now?
No, I'm still on a visa. I don't even have a green card yet. Yeah, so that's the next step. But so it became easier to actually get. I'm on an O1 visa, which the official title is I'm an alien of extraordinary ability.
Yeah, you can't do. All you could do is play music. You can't get paid for farting, even.
No. Yeah. So I'm allowed to do what I do here.
Yeah.
And those are 3-year visas. Hopefully 3 years, because sometimes they just give you a year but I've been lucky to get 3-year ones for the last few years. But you have to achieve a certain level of distinction in your field. Determined
by what?
I was touring in Europe and Canada for 7 years with my own band before I was considered worthy enough of a visa to tour here. So then all those awards you mentioned at the start, the Blues Hall of Fame, and so my immigration lawyer has to make a file I'm serious, it's the hardest audition I've ever been to. And an application showing all these guitar magazine interviews, and to show that only I could do Matt Schofield in America. There's and so finally I got the visa, which you have to keep renewing, and so it's an expensive and lengthy process, and interviews at the embassy. You can't apply for it while you're in the US. You have to leave the country. And, so you really, really have to want to play here. Let's put it that way, to go through it. And I know a lot of people who just don't bother. But for me, coming to the US, all my heroes were American blues players. And so it's like, for me, the only way to feel legitimate as a blues musician is to be accepted here and also be able to work with my heroes here. And so 2010, I finally start touring the US, and we go out driving around for weeks and weeks, and I lost loads of money.
Just trying to find gigs.
We just went out on tour, and it just, nobody knew who I was in a lot of places. So we just played to no one for like 2 months, but it was, some were great, but that's, so then that's how I've ended up here, is just keep coming back working, and ended up with more and more, you can work. I haven't done a full UK tour since 2014 because there's just not enough people and places to play to, so. Whereas I played in 40 states or something in the US. So.
It's amazing, Matt, that, from an external point of view, the amount of sacrifice that you have went through to, want to be a part of whatever this country has to offer you. from a commitment standpoint, it's interesting that, it amazes me how, like, I don't want to turn this into a political conversation. A, I'm not smart enough, and B, it's just not the deal here. But it amazes me how it's so tough.
Well, it is. There's nowhere like it. I mean, I've been all over the world, and there's nothing like a U.S. visa application process. Like I say, Canada, you don't even need one to do the festivals. And I've been to Japan and India and Turkey, all kinds of places where you require a visa, but it's just as simple as, applying on a form and maybe getting your passport stamped at an embassy or something like that. They glue it in there and post it back to you the next day, but you have to go through interviews and have lawyers and pay these. Costs about $4,000 for a visa. And
just to get a visa?
For my visa is about $4,000 each time. Half of that's the government, half of that's the lawyers,
Each time.
You could do it yourself, but my God, I would then be able to do anything else for a year.
Yeah.
It's like it's a full-time job making this application. So, and then so Johnny Henderson started coming over, and we started doing the trio in 2010 on tour. And, I was getting him a visa as well. So then he gets an 02 visa to go with my 01 as essential support artist. But then that's like another $3,000 for his one, So that's unfortunately the reason I don't bring Johnny over at the moment is that he's now a dad, so he doesn't want to be away as much or can't be away as much. And so it's just not worth throwing the $3,000 or $4,000 on a visa that we can't use all the time,
Shit.
So there's all that. And since we're talking about this stuff, and again, it's not political, it's just...
No, it is. It's just what you're experiencing.
Just the fact of the matter. Then, as a non-resident alien who's working here, the IRS takes 30% of my gig fee, not my income, the gig fee.
So before you pay anybody?
Before I paid anybody or booked a flight or put gas in the van or got a hotel or anything, 30% comes off the top and goes straight to the IRS in case I'm going to run off and leave the country and not pay any tax. So and so when you put it down to, like, let's say 30% there, 10% management, 15% booking agency, or vice versa, whichever arrangement you have. For the last 7 years or 8 years, I essentially have to operate for the year with US gigs on 45% of the gig fee to pay. And now you do your tax returns and you can claim some of this 30% back, each year. But then that's a whole other can of worms as well. And
then you got to wait though. You're basically prepaying your taxes over the top a year ahead of time.
Because of course I'm not getting.
Yeah, you're not in the 30%. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I was getting the entire fee with no expenses, but everything comes out of that. So
that's crazy. We need a Kickstarter for Max Schofield right now.
Well, no, and that's where. So
crazy,
combine that with the way we find the music industry at the moment, and you start to sort of seeing answers to things like why people aren't putting out records and things, because it's just just the overheads and just to keep doing this, like, so you make sacrifices but basically everything I've earned certainly since I've been touring the US, but has gone back into just keeping doing it. And now at the end of last year I got my own place here, for the first time in my life, so other than that, it's been on the road, and then you turn 40 and you.
But don't try to sell it because the IRS will take 30%.
Yeah, right. There you go. So I actually own a home here, and I pay extremely high tax rates, and I'm still not a resident. So it's
that's amazing. It's that there's
a whole world.
No, it's just not fair is the bottom line, and I don't know enough about this to even give an opinion on it, but I know that what you're going through doesn't really seem fair.
It's certainly an odd way, and it sort of hampers your ability to do business in some ways. I have to be very strategic about my choices of gigs here. And the weird thing is, of course, everybody that's employed other than me is a U.S. citizen who's also paying, tax on their earnings from me. So, and so in that respect, I've always found the tax thing slightly strange, because I'm turning down gigs because it's just not worth it by the time I've paid. It's cheaper to stay at home,
Right.
And yet everything that by doing the gig would be going into the U.S. economy, So I would be, the people at the gig are Americans, the people working at the bar at the venue is American, the promote, So me being somewhere and doing my band, I'm employing.
You're running a small business that's generating revenue and employing people.
And yet I'm sort of crippled often in it being able to do that, because the tax doesn't come out of my income; it comes off the gross rather than the net. So very, very interesting scenario that I spent a long time dealing with. So again, I just tell you that not for any reason other than that's how much it's important for me to be able to play here and have the experiences that I have here. And some of it goes down again to play with musicians that I would just never even run into in the UK. So
the caliber of musicianship is a little higher here, or there's just more of that.
Yeah, and just my remaining heroes that I might get to play with, or something like, let's say, a couple of years ago I went to New Orleans and did a gig with George Porter, the bass player from the Meters, and Johnny Vodakovich, the amazing New Orleans drummer, and we did a trio, fully improvised gig. I mean, when I say fully improvised, we just got up, having just met and just played, and it just two full hour or more sets of just completely freeform improvisation within blues and funk in New Orleans, and somebody would step up to the microphone and sing a bit, and then it would go into a different tune. And that's George Porter. I mean, I covered a Meters tune on the first record that I made, and I have done several times. And so to just have an experience like that alone, is not something I would be able to have in any other country. To go to New Orleans, even just New Orleans, is just an unbelievable experience as a musician. There's nowhere like it, So in a lot of ways, I do it. I've done it for those reasons as well, just sort of self fulfillment, really.
Yeah, but I really admire your, your passion and your commitment to what you're doing, because I think in your particular case there are extenuating circumstances that. I mean, look, everybody's got their own story, and nothing's easy for anybody. But I think in your particular case, you have extra stuff that isn't really. That you really have to, that might otherwise keep you constantly evaluating that decision that you're making on a regular basis. I mean,
well, I do, sometimes it's been like, is this worth pursuing, but I guess the whole thing's what they call a sunken cost fallacy at this point. I'm so far into it, I can't stop doing this now, Not that I would stop doing it, but you know what I mean? It's like
you invested so much of yourself at this point. You're hopefully more than halfway through the tunnel.
And of course, I have really, really loyal fans that have supported me all along. And not a day goes by where somebody doesn't post on social media, any news on a new record or all that kind of thing. Or when are you coming to play here? And I often say I'd love to, but first of all, it's not up to me. I don't get to make those decisions myself. I often have to explain to people the best thing you can do is tell your local festival or promoter that you want to see me there. So I say that because there's people. It's worth doing it for the people that care about it, aside from me. So.
What happens now? Just like, when does this ever get resolved, or it's just every, I feel like they're just, holding the carrot in front of you, and then, okay, we'll renew, and then we'll,
Yeah. So, it will be getting the green card, which would make me a permanent resident. And, then hopefully that would satisfy the IRS, that I'm here and not running off, and I can do a tax return like everybody else. So,
I think I may have a listener who wants to marry you. I don't know if that's something that.
well, that's the funny thing. My girlfriend is a U.S. citizen, and but I know people that did that not for the reason of staying. Happened to get married.
Just got married. Yeah.
Well, before they were a great friend of mine. Who played drums on one of my records, lives in New Orleans. He's from France, and he married a girl from New Orleans, and he lives there now. But he had to go back, even though he was married to her. He had to go back for 6 months to France, and couldn't work, and now he's finally been fully given the go ahead. Wow. I'm not sure if he's a citizen yet, but they spent like 2 years working on it, even though they were married. So that doesn't necessarily solve anything anyway. It's pretty crazy.
So the next step is a green card, and any idea when that'll be coming, or should be coming, or supposed to be coming?
Well, when I pay for it.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, you got to start the process with the lawyer.
I have another year and a half on this visa, so I should probably drop my immigration lawyer email and say, what do we do next? It's that kind of thing. But then that's it's probably even more expensive than the visa, and you're not, again, none of these things you're not guaranteed to get, and you don't, you could spend all the money and they might say, what, we're not renewing, or you're not getting a green card, or So I hopefully all my previous visas all count towards showing that the green card is worthwhile, because the whole idea of the green card is intent to remain. You have to show intent to remain. And so the fact that I've been working here and putting down roots here and paying tax here and all.
Well, now that you have a house too, that's, to me, that's a big, big, big plus in your favor.
Yeah, it should all count towards my intent to remain. So, but it's quite a thing, and even just it's just from a time point of view, and all that stuff takes up so much time. The work you do on that kind of stuff, and I have a manager and booking agent, and they do they help with all of that kind of thing, but nonetheless, it does come down to a lot of work for me as well,
Of course, yeah.
It's all taking time away from writing songs and playing guitar, things like
Plus,
that.
it's stressful. It's stressful work. It's not the kind of thing, you don't just spend an hour on it and it's over and done with. It's like, now you got other people making decisions about your life, which is always fucking scary,
Yeah.
And
it's very consuming would be the word,
Yeah. Wow, well, thank you for sharing that. When you first came here, and maybe this question won't be as relevant to you because you had been here multiple times with trips with your buddies and with your dad. But what were some of the initial differences that you noticed between England and America, both in the music business and in the general daily activities? And I was also curious, besides Jacob's cream crackers, is there anything that you missed? We got to get those like weekly here, man.
Right. I do not. I'm not a cream cracker fan, so I wouldn't worry about those ones. But I do miss Walker's salt and vinegar crisps.
Yeah, we got to get those too.
I get a good salt and vinegar crisp.
Do you know my wife, when she comes back, she literally has a suitcase
right
full of freaking crisps.
And I turned Christine, my girlfriend, onto proper British Cadbury's chocolate as well.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same here either.
No, it's not. And my wife's the same.
And I also miss pies, but British pies.
Yeah.
So meat in pastry rather than like American pies.
Rather than apples and peaches.
Steak and ale pies and sausage rolls and pork pies and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to get good meat in pastry products here. It's a different thing.
Yes.
So those are my main things that I miss. But Walker's crisps and meat pies. But I mean, I guess I've spent so much of my life here as well, and in North America in general and in Canada too, that I guess they've both been sort of normal to me, you know, for so long. So it never seemed like any kind of culture shock, you know. And I think, of course, in the UK, we grow up with so much American culture via TV and movies and things like that, you know, the first time I went to New York, there was steam coming out of the grid, out of the manhole covers, you know, and it's like, it's just like it is on the TV, yellow cabs, and, you know, so you already know what it's like in a way. So that's been, I never really thought about it that much from a cultural perspective, I suppose. But I will tell you, culturally, it's something that the comedian Ricky Gervais said and highlighted, and I thought that's exactly right, you know, in terms of the outlook on things. And this is how he put it, if I can do it justice. But it was, you know, in the US, you're born and you're told anyone born here could be the president, you know, so there's that sort of sense of social mobility, I suppose, that perhaps isn't entirely true, but in theory, you know, all men created equal, and if you're born here, you could be the leader of the country. Creates quite a different mindset on what is possible to achieve, you know, in a kind of large cultural sense. And in the UK, you're born and you're told it'll never happen to you. so and that's how Ricky put it, you know. So that you kind of your overall view of the world, you know, Americans are quite positive and
optimistic.
Optimistic, you know, the American dream, you know. Whereas the UK, you know, is it's like don't get too big for your boots, you know. Don't get ahead of yourself. Know your station. And so I certainly noticed that.
Know your plot. What does my wife say? She's someone's. What does this mean? She said sometimes she's losing the plot. What does that mean? Forgot. Losing
the plot means you know, you're
losing it, just
losing your mind. You know, you can't keep a thread of what's going on. You know. Literally, losing the plot of rather than the film of your life.
Okay, you know? Okay.
It's definitely. I noticed that in audiences, you know. So American audiences have always been much more demonstrative of their feelings about you. You know, much more able to cheer and applaud. And I spent many years in the UK playing to a rows full of people with arms folded and like
really
a golf clap at the end. And then they all come over afterwards and tell you how much they enjoyed it, but you've been up on stage for 2 hours just killing yourself, thinking, "What do you want? Blood? What have I got to do?" You know. And whereas here it's much more woo. You know, there's much more.
Well, Brits are much more
kind of thing, but that makes for a different energy on the gig, and I think that it's cultural, from a deep-rooted cultural thing. You know, so
Brits tend to be much more emotionally stoic.
Yes, repressed.
They're not. They're not like when I go over there. You know, they're like, you know, I could tell they're all like, "Dan, doesn't this guy shut up?" But I don't have to say much for them to say that. That's the thing.
I will do much louder as well, as everybody is much louder. People like nobody speaks with a full voice all the time in the UK. You'd be, you know, like so. I would, you know, if I'm at home, I'd be having a conversation kind of at this level with someone. You know,
wow, interesting.
Whereas in America, people speak with full voice very often. You know, but it's again, these are all just, you know, observations, you know, that you gradually make. But it's the flip side, you know, is they really, really listen in our UK gigs, you know, so they seem very, kind of reserved, you know, but they are listening. But it makes the energy different, you know, and especially with an improvisational gig, and it's a two-way street, you know. So so sometimes you want more feedback at the time, you know, like it's and you get that in the US. But the flip side of that is sometimes people are a bit too rowdy, a gig, and then so I would say there's more, sort of talking over the band over here than there would be there. It's sort of like one extreme or the other sometimes, They're completely silent and barely applauding, but really listening and enjoying. Or then sometimes some places you go, they're not paying attention.
You know what I hate? I really feel bad when I'm at a show and I see people like in the front, like on their phone. I always feel really bad because I'm like, God damn, that guy's up there killing himself. You got to put that phone away. Just pretend, Yeah,
I mean, the whole phone thing in general, from people just being on their phone rather than at the gig to people filming the gig, I've given up. I don't say anything because it's just the way it is, but I hate most of the clips on YouTube, and like it changes the way you play because you become risk averse,
Yeah, because you don't know if anybody's paying attention.
Yeah, but then with people filming stuff, that changes it for me as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't think everything was supposed to be preserved forever. So that's another thing that's all over the world now. But that's not an American or British thing.
No.
But I've struggled with that for a long time. I've given up. I try and not think about it, and I try and just go for it anyway. But then you can't help be in the back of your mind, this is going to go on YouTube and then be open season for people who have no idea what you do to just comment and all over.
Yeah. I know.
That's always in our minds these days, of like, and especially in order to how I play, I can only play in the moment. I'm a horrible session guitarist. I can't play on demand. I have to feel and hear something and then play it, and it would be different every time. I can't even play my own solos again, really. And I'd have to go and learn what I played if I wanted to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, but you should say, fuck it, and I don't care what they're filming, and do whatever the hell you want to do.
That's what I've got to. I have to do that now. But it's always still, it just changes it, and the funny thing is that, in the last few tours, there's been a few venues that don't allow it.
Great.
And we've had such a great gig, and then you kind of find yourself in a slightly ironic position of man, that was such a great gig because nobody was filming it. I wish somebody had filmed it.
No, but you can always get a buddy to have, to film it. That's what you have to do in that. Okay, you have to. Here's my Sony or my JVC camera, and just do your thing.
So it's like that. It's like the thing in science. The act of observing something changes it. You know?
Yeah.
And so that you can't have something exist in without observing it, but observing it changes how it exists.
Interesting.
And that's what it feels like with all these cameras at gigs. Is like the act of filming it changes it, and it would be better without filming it, but then you'd never capture it. You're kind of caught in this circle with it, And if you go on YouTube, the thing that frustrates me, especially, is the sound, and it's like then people are casting judgments and
they're casting judgments about YouTube sound.
On
a phone. Hey, man,
listen, I don't have a touring sound guy. Like maybe if I wasn't paying 30% tax on the on the gig, I might be able to take a guy with me all the time. But I'm at and that's actually the scariest thing in my career, and something that you do. It almost puts you into a stall pattern of like, I would say, like fear, of not. I've always said I want the only thing that determines how good my gig is to be me.
Yeah,
I don't external influences affecting it.
All right, Matt. So tell me about the situation when you were playing with Buddy Guy and Robben Ford. I know these guys were kind of like big influences on you. And also, did you learn anything from like any takeaways, either musically, business-wise, or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, well, the reason I always cite those guys is because they really are really some of the only living core influences of mine. Everybody else is sadly no longer with us. That were really, in let's say probably the half dozen core influences that make me who the player I am. Those are really two of the only guys that I can play with, still, and have that experience. So the first main thing about it is just how heavy it is when you do that. It's certainly very different with both of them. Buddy, it was in India actually, which is not where I expected for that to happen for the first time, but. I end up find myself on his encore in India, and Johnny Lang's up there and Shamika Copeland and stuff. But that's I've shared the stage with those kind of folks a lot, but not. You just realize how kind of trivial what I do, or it feels really trivial all of a sudden, because Buddy is right at the very beginning of electric blues guitar and influence, and so and he runs through Hendrix and Clapton and Stevie and basically everybody after him, so it's you're going so to the roots there, or as much as I can experience, and I got to hang out and meet BB and spend a little bit of time with him, but never got to play with him, and he was wonderful and gracious and very sweet, and that was enough, with BB. But so then to actually play with Buddy, you just stand there and go, well, I better not sound like an idiot here, I better sound like I really care about the blues, that was my overwhelming thing, is I want him to know that I have listened and I've listened deeply, and I want him. I wanted to play something that he would understand, that I understand it, So that was really the thing there, and it seemed to be well received. So that was nice, But it was just kind of a unique kind of pressure that I wouldn't feel with almost anybody else that I could find myself playing with. You know what I mean? It's just because it's so deep and it's so much in the history of electric guitar playing now to stand next to him, So that was the main takeaway from that, is that I felt okay about standing up there. I didn't feel like I sounded like an idiot in the end.
That's great. No, I mean, that's great. I mean, that you felt confident. That's great.
There's a video of it from the side of the stage, I really like the solo I played, and often I listen to stuff and I don't really listen to myself back very often at all unless I have to. But when I watch that one, I go, yeah, that's all right. That came across pretty good. And it was like I got called out and I run out and I throw my pedal board down, or it's already been thrown down, but I've never plugged into the amp before that's out there. It's on a festival stage. It's just a reissue twin. And all of a sudden, all of those things become completely meaningless. If you can't do it through whatever amp is on stage at the time and make it sound good and not be bothered by just having to plug in and go, no sound check, no nothing, just never even plugged into the amp before until I play the first note on the gig, But if you can't do it like that, then you shouldn't be up there doing it with someone like. So that was kind of the thing there, is like all those things. It was almost like proving to myself, not in a egotistical kind of, so I'm that now, just proving to myself that okay, I can do this.
You could hang with him.
Yeah. So that was good.
Let me ask you one, before you start on Robben, let me ask you one question. I've seen Buddy in concert. I don't know. I've seen him since, I think the first time I saw him was probably in the 80s at the Beacon Theater or at the Ritz down in Manhattan, which doesn't exist anymore. But I've probably seen him 5 times. And there's like 2 or 3 different Buddy guys that show up. Yeah,
for sure.
There's the one guy that shows up and, takes care of business, gets, and just gets shit done. And then there's the other guy that shows up like motherfucker all night long And I've often wondered, is he buzzed? Like, is he drinking?
Yeah.
Because it's such a different, and I'm not looking for gossip, but I'm just, how does that work? If you even know?
I really don't know. And I couldn't say I know him at all.
Yeah.
You know, nice to me. I don't know if he'd even remember me at this point.
Sure.
But, so I don't have any, I know he likes I know he likes a bit of cognac. Other than that, I think it's a mood and a room vibe, and sometimes I think I try and think of it from the perspective of the career that these guys have had, and like him, until the 90s again, he didn't make a record for like 11 years, and it just, I think there's part of him that feels like he needs to entertain the crowd, whatever it takes, I'd be happy to just hear him play, and my favorite stuff being generally the older stuff, but I think there's a crowd pleasing thing that he feels almost obliged to put on a show. And I think he feels like sometimes that show maybe goes over more than just standing and playing wood, as many people have dealt with, when they talk about Hendrix getting sick of doing his moves and stuff, and then getting the Gypsies and just standing and playing. And that's some of my favorite of his playing, when he's not jumping around and doing that stuff. But I understand it as well, and you do feel, I mean, I'm not a jump around doing stunts kind of player. And sometimes you think, talking about having the organ trio and how that goes over differently in different places. Even when I have a bass player playing bass, just somebody else stood up on stage seems to make it more accessible for people in terms of visual aspect. So I understand him running around and joking and things like that. But I've seen him do it both ways as well, and I've seen him just get down on some blues it's I guess it's all how he feels, because he's certainly in the moment when he's playing.
His playing was always great. I've never seen him deliver a bad show, but like one time I kind of felt bad because he had to have been buzzed. I mean, I think he was buzzed. And he said, "Can someone tell me the name of any of my albums?" And I was midway up. And to be honest with you, I was just totally laying back. I think I was with my son, and I don't know that I could have at that second I had to probably think I would have come up with, and I've listened to all of them dozens, but I just was, he got really pissed at that. I know. And he was like, "You motherfuckers are coming here to pay. You came and named one of my records." And I was like, I could kind of understand that.
And also, he's 80.
Yeah.
I think he's 80 now, know, and, like that. So he's twice my age, and I get crankier doing it, driving around in a van these days than I did when I was 20, so I kind of understand it from that perspective as well. Sometimes, it must be brutal when you're 80, the traveling and like on and off planes. Just like we were talking about, like knowing which town you're even in at some point. It's
totally.
So I kind of understand it, but he can do anything. There's a few guys that I don't care what they sound like at all. I'm just grateful to be in the room with them. Like a couple of times I saw BB, who was, as we've discussed, my biggest hero, my first inspiration, and he was barely playing he was talking a lot of the show the last couple of times I saw him, but just to be in the room, is enough for me with those guys. So.
I hear you. Robben, you about to talk about him. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that was just sort of actually getting to know him more than anything. So, different experience. He's always been super, super gracious, and so that's a different one. That's more from a, I suppose, more or like a technical aspect, because he's such a ninja. On the guitar, and like, so when you stand next to him, you're like, what? That's more of a like, why am I even here feeling?
I'm sure you've seen his stuff with Miles Davis.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty mind blowing when you look at some of that stuff.
And I've had a lot of comparisons to Robben over the years, especially early on my first few records, which I always found slightly weird because I don't consider myself, nor have I ever tried to be the same kind of player as he has. So he is where the extent of my interest in being jazzy, I suppose, finishes. If you know what I mean. I listen to a lot of jazz, but not guitar jazz. I never got into guitar jazz, nor was interested in pursuing it. So I listen to a lot of jazz piano, and even that's the bluesy case. Oscar Peterson stuff is like my favorite stuff. But so I really feel like the blues guy next to him. But he seems to kind of like that. So when I get up and just play some blues with him, and so he's always been super gracious. But I think pretty much any guitarist on the planet would bow to Robben on that stuff to some degree. It doesn't go any. For me, there's like a handful of guys that are like the very pinnacle of what you can hope to achieve, not as guitarists, just as artists on the guitar, if you know what I mean. Beyond it, and so I think of Robben, I think of John Schofield, who I haven't played with, but he's always been nice, and Mike Landau as well is another person I would put at that. They're just sort of beyond the instrument at this point. It's pretty it's breathtaking in that respect. They're not like playing the guitar in front of them. It's just the medium they've chosen to express themselves via. It's different, than being guitarists.
No, I totally get that.
They could be painting or doing interpretive dance or whatever. It's whatever medium they required to express themselves. It happens to be the guitar. So that was the experience of just standing next to somebody really on that level. And the first time I was only like, probably like 27 or something like that at the time. So, but there's been a bunch of times with that now, and we actually talked about doing a record together, which
man, that'd be great.
He was interested in producing something for me and writing some stuff, but that goes back to more record industry nonsense than anything else, or why that didn't work. And maybe somewhere down the line when it lines up, I would love to. Obviously, that would be a really nice full circle to bring things in, but that was a couple of years ago, and we talked back and forth, and it's industry nonsense. There was a surprising lack of excitement in various quarters about that possibility, and we're like, what, But he's in a different spot, I think, as well. He's not really that interested in guitar playing these days, obviously, I mean, in terms of focus for him as an artist, he's into his songs and singing. So maybe when both the industry and the creative parts line up at some point in the future, I'd obviously love to do that. Yes,
and I hope you do get to. That'd be nice for you. Hey, talk about growing up. I know you grew up in Manchester. You talked a little bit about your childhood. What was it like growing up there? You said it was a smaller town, and
Manchester is. I was only there till I was 7, so we were kind of on the somewhat suburban side of Manchester. So that was pre any music stuff, So and then we moved down south to the southwest to the very small south in the Cotswolds.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. Having moved around a lot, it's hard for anyone to keep. People say, "Where are you from?" And I get introduced as being from Manchester, but all the blood is from Manchester. I think we were the first in the family to venture away in the immediate family.
So you had a big family there back home.
Well, my mum has 4 brothers. My dad has a sister and had a brother. So and then they also there was but fair few cousins and aunts and uncles and
that's a big family.
Grandparents. Yeah. So my dad getting a job down south was us moving away from there, you know, and even back then, you know, it's funny. So we're talking early 80s, moving. I was 7, so like just turned 7, so 84 or whatever. It didn't seem like people that were moving as, you know, the world was still smaller in 1984. I think, you know, now it's like it's everybody's at the airport. But my grandparents, I don't know if my dad's mum even went on a plane ever. You know what I mean? So it was a smaller world.
That is interesting. Yeah,
people didn't, you know, they went to the seaside in England.
Yeah.
Holidays. Yeah, I know. Yeah, my mum's mum probably went on a plane once, I think, to like one of the islands in the UK, I think is the story there. So yeah, it's like my world is so much bigger than theirs was. It's I go on a plane pretty much every week at some point to go somewhere. So
you must feel good about that, though. There's a lot of things. That's a big, you know, there's a big accomplishment in that.
Yeah, and
I think so anyway.
Certainly, my dad coming from a largely working class upbringing in Manchester and ending up in California as he did. That's a big leap. So I've sort of been dragged with that in some respects, you know. I think in terms of venturing further afield. So, but where I grew up in the southwest in the Cotswolds is beautiful, and now I go whenever I'm back in England, I get myself a night in this nice country hotel pub, even if I'm just by myself, just to soak up that again, you know, and just one night there, and they have some of the food and a beer, and they have these nice rooms at this country this country pub hotel, and it's sort of important to go back there, you know. And everybody's moved away. My mum's back in Manchester, my sister's back in Manchester, you know. So, but I still swing by because it's a totally unique feeling place in the world. The Cotswolds.
Do you like the smaller town? Like inherently, if you had your choice and said, "Hey, money's not an obstacle, my career's not an obstacle," would you settle in a small? Like, would you be in like the middle of Nebraska or something? Or
no, not as much. No, it's just right. Actually, where I'm based now in Jupiter, in Florida, is just right. You know, I was further down the road in Florida, and now when I drive back down past Fort Lauderdale to Miami, I'm like, man, the traffic's driving me nuts. And so a lot of it comes from spending so much time on the road for the last, especially 15 years. You know, and so the last thing I want to do when I'm not having to get to a gig is be in any kind of traffic. But I do like to be able to have places to go and, relax and eat, and, you know, so it can't be too small, you know. And like we talked about the pub culture, you know, in the UK, I like having somewhere like that, you know. So it's finding the right. So I suppose this is really great where I am now. It's got the right balance of quietness and things, you know. I always thought, you know, my girlfriend being from New York City, I always thought at some point I'd love to live in New York City, you know. But I'm over it now.
you really need like an armament of money to live a good quality of life there, man. It's
I think it would
difficult.
be an experience if I had millions of dollars to spend on living in New York City. And there's an alternate version of my life where I did become really wealthy and move to New York City and have a fantastic penthouse apartment in Manhattan. But I'm not living that particular version. It turns out. So yeah. So I'm kind of now. I'm like, Do you
believe in that? Like.
No, I don't know. It's just it's just all the things that you think you might do when you're a kid, you know, like, so if 20 years ago I'd have been like, yeah, man, maybe I'll move to New York City and like be there, and, you know, because the first time you visit, you're like, whoa, this is amazing, I want to live here, you know. And now, having spent the last year spending quite a bit of time in between work there, should we go into town? You know, it's only but the traffic's not too bad. It's, 25 minutes down to like the village, you know, from where her apartment is, and it's like, nah, you know, it's just too much of an undertaking, you know, parking We got towed.
Oh, that's expensive as shit.
2 out of 3 trips in, we got towed. One was our fault. Then we parked successfully the next time, and then the third time we went in, they towed us for parking in it. She contested it, luckily, you know. But it's like that kind of stuff, you know. Why
don't you just take the subway in? It's much more efficient.
It's a fair old trek from Pelham Parkway there. So
you're a rookie.
Maybe I've done it a couple of times.
Well, you just take the number 6 train down to Grand Central. You're good to go.
You know, the novelty wears off. Let's put it.
I get it. What are some of the biggest obstacles besides the immigration stuff, which, God, it sounds like there is no bigger obstacle you could possibly have. But throughout this whole journey, either personal or music related or business related, what's like maybe some of the bigger obstacles that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, it's tough to answer anything specifically. I think the main thing that springs to mind is just it's where we find ourselves in the music industry. It's like a constant moving target, you know? So, which I don't think any of us expected. Even right when my first record came out, it wasn't quite like it is now, with the fact that records are almost pointless, you know, in terms of. That seems to be like an ongoing obstacle. Is trying to fit yourself in to the system of the record industry in some way. Not even to do better, just some kind of stability of career, you know. So, like, where once upon a time you'd have made. I'm 5 studio records in, and they were all well received. Nice, the reviews were good. So you kind of, if you'd have said to me when I was making the first one that I'd be 5 down the line and they'd all been well received, I maybe would have thought there'd be a bit more stability career-wise.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, I totally get that.
And there's not. So it's like I've kind of, not to suggest I'm a victim of the industry, but it certainly leaves things up in the air all the time, you know. And now I was talking to Kurt Fletcher about this when I saw him last. You kind of find yourself going from like an up and comer, you know, like the new guy, to now sort of woven into the fabric of modern blues guitar for certain fans of the genre. But there's been no like middle bit of the career where you can know that you're going to fill this many rooms or fill this many seats in a given size room. You know, it's like everything's a gamble these days. You know, it's like, is anybody going to turn up if I book a gig? You know, I get people when you come to Chicago a lot, and it's like, well, I don't know, because I don't know if anybody's going to come out. And so it all comes back to that, unfortunately. Yeah. I talked about that a lot, really, but that's been the biggest, I suppose, frustration is creativity and career desires being hampered by the ability to do them financially, you know?
Yes, I do. A lot of guys, I know Kurt, I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say that sort of knocks on then into your life as a whole, you know, in terms of ability and you know, everything I make. So I've many of my friends that I've lifelong friends, the same age as me, all have owned homes and are married and have families. You know, many of them have children now, and that's something that I've been careful to not get caught up in, regardless of any potential desire for it, if you see what I mean. Just simply because it's not something I could manage and keep doing what I do, how I do it. You know, something would really have to change in terms of stability of career in order to make those commitments to the degree I would want to make them if that was a thing I was planning on doing. You know what I mean?
I totally get it.
So I like even I love dogs and I'd love to have a dog, but I can't. It just doesn't. It's not a realistic thing for me, you know. So you make a lot of sacrifices to keep doing what you're doing. And I will say it's with my help of Jay, my manager of the last year or so, you know, we're getting things quite leveled out compared to how they have been, you know, much more up in the air, and trying to build from a sort of bit more of a stable platform, you know. So that's good. But yeah, everything kind of comes back down to that, and I think that would be the same, you know, like we mentioned, Kirk or Josh Smith, guys that I've, you know, done a lot of stuff with, who are a similar age and have had careers that follow similar paths, you know. I think we all find ourselves in that situation, really, you know.
I know Kirk is over there. I think he's in a relationship, but have you ever thought about, or even can you, with your immigration, do some work over in Europe and Asia even? Because I know a lot of guys do that, and they make these excursions, and
yeah, I mean, I go back a couple of times. I mean, this year I'm going back. I've been to Estonia and Finland already this year, you know, and I'm going back to the UK and a brief trip to Germany in the coming month, and then I'll be in Italy in June, and then Greece in July. So I go back and forth all the time. This year I'm going back and forth almost every month. It's kind of worked out that way, but which is funny now that I finally have a permanent place.
Yeah, you're going back. Well, I mean, that's just the way this shit is.
And I was back for most of the summer. In a way, it's been good being here for so long now and working so much here. It's actually starting to drum up its own kind of interest in me back there. You know, grass is always greener.
Yeah. The out of town experts coming home.
Yeah,
the homegrown boys coming home. Rather,
there's really not that many people sort of my generation or of the UK scene that I suppose I've come out of that have come to the US and done anything with it. You know, there really isn't. I don't really have. Davey Knowles, I suppose, would be the other guy. But, he's currently out. I saw him actually last week. He's out with Rory Gallagher's old band, doing like the band of Friends with Rory's band.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, from Isle of Man, and they sounded great. You know, so I know he came over probably a bit before me actually, and he's a bit younger than me. And there's a guitarist, Joanne Shaw Taylor, who is from Birmingham, and we have some mutual musicians that we both work with in our bands, and I know she's been over. But other than that, I'm sort of struggling to think of anyone else that has really got a foot in the scene. But, you know, as we talked about with the visa stuff, that's just enough of a stumbling block. So you really have to want to do it, you know. So then, maybe it does give you a little extra cachet to go back there, you know.
Yeah, I get that. Hey, let's talk gear for a few minutes. You're primarily a Strat guy, right? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I love lots of kinds of guitars, and there's lots I'd like to have, you know. But
what's your go-to?
But that's a sort of double question. The benchmark and my number one of all number ones is my original 1961 Strat, which I was lucky enough to get nearly 20 years ago now, you know, before they'd gone too crazy, and my dad helped me out with that at the time. You know, it was like, I gotta get it, you know. It's like but then they continue over that, you know, since I got it. So that was my only guitar for like 8 or 9 years. I made my first couple of records, and I literally only had that guitar. I went for quality, not quantity.
Yeah, there's nothing. I'm thinking that, you know, it's just a weird world we live in. Like, I would imagine, like, if you were starting to play music in 1977 or 67, and all you had was a 61 Strat, it would have been like nobody would have even given it, like, yeah, man, that's a great guitar. Now it's like, it just seems like everything, like, you gotta have more. It's weird and everything.
Yeah, and that's something I don't really relate to that, you know. And one of my best friends here in Florida, great guitar player Jeff Prine, has a 960 Les Paul that he bought around 1970. You know, he was like 17 or maybe, you know, 18 years old or 71, something like that. And that was his guitar. He had a 1960 Sunburst Les Paul, and he still got it.
Yeah.
He can't take it out now because it's worth more than his house, you know.
Yeah.
But it's he brings it out occasionally. But he did almost all his career with just that guitar, and now he spends his time trying to find one other one that he likes as much, you know, that he can take out. But I was the same. Right? I got the one guitar that I always wanted, a Rosewood Board early 60s Strat, and so I got it, and so I made my first few records with that Strat and a 64 Super Reverb. So that, you know,
what a great combo,
and one pedal in between. You know,
you're not a big pedals guy though, are you?
No. I mean, my board now has got a bunch of stuff that is more for convenience than anything. So it's got some switching stuff by the Gig Rig on it and stuff. But I still, to be honest, and that's great for doing my shows when I'm on a big long tour and it's all nicely wired up. But a lot of stuff I've been doing this year, I've just been taking taking my Klon out or something like that, which and so just a Strat into an overdrive, or maybe a choice of two overdrives, or and into the amp, you know. And there's something really, really liberating about doing gigs like that for me. So I did two gigs this past weekend, and one I just had two pedals on the floor, and then one I took the big board, and it was kind of weird going back to the big board then for a second. And it's only big because I've got two of the same delay on it, so that I don't have to bend down and change the delay time. You know, it's just convenience.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah.
I can just switch between them, and you know, it's got a floor tuner on it and a fuzz that I use on one song.
So you don't use wah?
Yeah, I've just been. I didn't for ages and ages because it really homogenizes the tone, you know, like, so whatever your rig and everything, as soon as you step on a wah, it's the wah-wah sound, you know, and it seemed to be the go-to for all the blues rock guys when I was starting, so I actually deliberately shied away. But then sometimes you're like, yeah, this could do with a bit of wah-wah, so I've been just digging on. This guy in the UK makes them called Venus Switch wahs, and I got to know him through the guy that makes the pickups in the guitars that I need to talk about in a second, which are my main touring guitars and other ones. But yeah, that's really cool. It's like just it's got a few knobs you can tweak in the sound. But I mean, again, with that, I don't even know. I'm just not a nerd about that stuff. I don't know what the great wahs were or anything like that. I don't know what exactly the one to have. Josh always tells me the King Vox is the one, but I'm more of like, does it wah? Okay, you know, yeah, it does. For as much as I use it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm much fussier about different things than that, you know. So with my overdrive pedals, they have to work well with the volume knob on the guitar, so I can use them as though I'm not using any pedals, if you see what I mean. Because I'm always, I might be soloing with the overdrive on, but with the volume of the guitar on 8, and it has to respond like it's the amp, you know, that kind of thing.
Totally get it.
So I'm looking for all that stuff, dynamics, rather than it being of a given year or flavor or something. That's not my side of the nerdery, you know, that some people get into. But so it's been that simple for a long time. So in some ways, my gear is the most complicated it's ever been, because I've got like 5 pedals on the big board.
That's nothing compared to most
it's
guys,
still
man.
Pretty minimal.
Go ahead, sorry.
I just wanted to say that other than the 61 Strat, you know, I tour now because they lost the 61 Strat between Italy and Belgium for like 36 hours once. So I had to check it, and it was just gone. They couldn't tell me where it was, whether it was still in Italy or in Belgium. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So one of my oldest friends, who I used to buy strings off when I was like 13 in the guitar shop they worked in Swindon in Wiltshire, near where I had moved. He was the luthier there for many years at the shop, and then he started touring with me, doing sound and teching and just general all-round kind of one-man machine, you know, in terms of getting things done. Yeah, and so he always built guitars on and off, but he's like, right, I'm going to build you something. So now I play his guitars, the SVL guitars, on tour exclusively, and that's you know, basically he started like reverse engineering my 61 Strat and getting down to the real nitty gritty of what makes it what makes it how good it is, and like all down to neck angles and weights and all that stuff. So I'm very, very happy to be playing those all the time now, because I don't have to take the 61 on a plane anymore. So,
God, that must be scary.
Yeah. So Simon's I got 4 of his Strats now, and even one of those is my favorite, which is the one that looks just like the original 61, and it just feels right, and it sounds. He found some older to make it from, so the wood is the same age, and it really has that, So
everybody tells me that the old wood is really one of the things that you could replicate everything, but if you don't have this old slab of wood, it's just not going to sound the same.
I'm telling you, it's because I have 2 that he made from, really great, nice lightweight wood, but newer growth, and they're great guitars, but they just have a different response and a different arc to the note than the old wood. The old wood just has a different attack, so they've been like a real game changer for me, being able to have a guitar that does what the 61 Strat does, but is A, I don't have to worry about it, and B, we can tweak it in a certain direction with choices of things. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah, totally.
SVL is we go way back.
Shout out to SVL. There you go, man.
Yeah.
So he makes these guitars in the UK, or is he making them here now?
He makes them in the UK. He's still over there out in the countryside, and he's worked a lot with Robben as well over the last few years, and because he also mixes live sound. He co-produced and engineered my last record, and was involved in pretty much all the records I've made. So he's like the one of the spokes on the wheel of the entire thing. From making guitars to engineering to driving the van when needed. So,
yeah. Well, that's good. You got guys on your team like that, man.
He's become a go-to guy. I mean, I lost him last year. He didn't do anything because he was with he's Pete Townsend's amp tech these days as well.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
He fixes tube amps as well. So.
Silly question for you. I'm like a guy who plays guitar in his bedroom or his office, right? Yeah. So, I have this amp. It's a PV Delta Blues amp. It's a 30 watt amp, 15-inch speaker. Fucking great. I love it. It's I think it's 2001. Okay.
Right.
And it has a, dirt channel.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since I've got it, I have not used any pedals because the dirt channel on it is phenomenal.
Yeah, right.
So my question is, and I apologize if this is a stupid question. If they have amps like this, why do so many people and I get it, a fuzz pedal might be different than a distortion pedal, might be different than an overdrive pedal.
Yeah.
But if you have something like that, why would you still need a pedal if you're really happy with or is that a stupid, ignorant question?
No, it's not a stupid question, and it's something I've experimented with, using, because I've been using 2-rock amplifiers for about 12 years, and they do amps that are both more like the Dumble overdrive thing with the overdrive channel, and then a single channel cleaner amp that's more like a Fender amp,
Yeah.
And it's just a different feel to it, so, and I tried the first couple of 2-rocks I had the overdrive channel, and to me, it's mainly about the response on the input of the amp. So I'm not actually adding much gain with any of my pedals, or the gain knob is rarely over 12 o'clock, unless it's a fuzz or something. What I'm doing is adding level into the amp. So I'm pushing the front of the amp harder, and that causes it to overdrive the input of the amp. Whereas on an amp with an overdrive channel, generally you're probably cascading a gain stage inside the amp into another one to generate overdrive. So it's a different way of getting drive, and when I was younger, and of course listening to Robben, who used the Dumble overdrive special, Larry Carlton and those guys, and they would use the overdrive channel on the amp often, and it has this very dynamic and very focused sort of sound. But that was because I discovered those kind of players later, I was still coming from BB and Stevie Ray and Albert Collins and Hendrix, who were all either using humbuckers or into an amp without any pedals, or even Albert Collins was using a tube screamer towards the end, actually, or using Strats with something then pushing the front of the amp. So actually, if I was using humbuckers, I it works better just straight into the amp for me, But with the single coil pickups, I like to then be able to boost that level of the pickups going into the amp. It's just a different feel, different response, and I guess I come from the school of hitting the front of the amp hard rather than adding the overdrive to that signal. It's like two different points in the signal chain, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Yeah, I just, cause ever since I like this dirt, it's called dirt, and I like that dirt sound, it's a thicker, like if I turn it up, it sounds like, Albert King, it's a big, loud, and I'm like, great, I'm good, I'm done. I have a couple of really cool, I have like a Wampler overdrive, I have a big muff, and I love them, but I just haven't really needed to use them. So I was just curious. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, I'm using almost all the same brand of pedals at this point. Most of my stuff on my board is Mad Professor stuff from Finland, because I think it just is voiced. Well, I know Harry and Marco over there and the guys. They listen to the same kind of music I listen to. So for some reason, I've ended up gravitating towards the pedal. It all seems to be voiced pretty good, so it's still, and I only ever really have one. I don't stack pedals or do any of that, so it's only ever one thing. So really, I'm just a guitar, one pedal, a little bit of reverb, and a little bit of kind of delay stuff into an amp still. So it's pretty straight ahead. But I must say, the new Two Rocks with the overdrive channel, that since my friends Eli and Mac took over the company again recently, the overdrive channels are much more workable for me than they have been before. So I've been messing around with that again. It's just two different ways to skin a cat, I guess.
There's a guy in England who makes pedals. I saw him maybe a year ago. I saw them online, and I was going to get one. They sounded great. They sounded like an old Klon fuzz. The only thing was they don't have a plug. They only they were metal pedals. Shit, I can't think of the guy who made them. Older guy, but man, they sounded great. I wish I could think of them, but like,
so you have to use a battery.
Yeah, you have to use a battery.
You know what? I've been saying I'm using a couple of pedals and stuff. I've been using batteries again as well. And it's something kind. It's like the more stuff that gets thrown at me, like the more I go back to like I say, I made the first couple of records. I never dreamed of buying like some kind of regulated power supply. It was batteries, and, so it's like the further we go down the gear, the more I go backwards. It's funny.
A lot of guys do that. They like the battery, and there's a certain they feel like there's a certain spot after it's worn a bit where it breaks up even more on the distortion pedal.
I've been buying the bulk cheap carbon zinc batteries on Amazon because you can get the crap carbon ones on there, and they're definitely vibier in the certain pedals, the way that I mean, that's where I run out of knowledge as to why, but it's how they discharge the amperage or the current, whatever it is, I don't, but there's something like, and I've been taking my original Klon out, which is ridiculously worth $2,000 now or something. We just, Simon SVL ordered like 2 or 3 of them like 12 years ago or something, and so I've had it ever since, and it was $250, but
which is a lot of money 12 years ago for a pedal. It was crazy,
but it's not $2,000.
No, but it was probably $650.
It may, I don't know. I mean, these days, like, there's a million like $300 tube screamers in every guitar shop made in somebody's shed. It's like, so the whole pedal thing's become great. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff with Free the Tone from Japan, and Yuki, the engineer over there, he's a real audio engineer and an electronics engineer who makes pedals, and he designs digital delays with programming and all this stuff. And I think, that's a guy that knows how to make pedals. There's all the there's a million Tube Screamer copies available, and so I don't even get round to trying them. These days, it's crazy, but there's definitely something about that original Klon still. If I just take one pedal out, I just did it last night. I just had one of my SPLs, the Klon, and my newest Two-Rock, and what a sound! It's just direct, and there's just no, it's just.
Where'd you play?
I'm going to record some new stuff next month, and I'm thinking that's going to be it again, just like on the first record.
Good. What's the downside?
Not really anything. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I had my tremolo pedal on this, a bit of tremolo, but then within 8 bars of the tune, you've made it work anyway, or something.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I do like my Mad Professor delay always. I put that on top of the amp quite often these days, so it's not really a conscious thing on the floor. It's more part of the overall thing, but it's just a little thickener kind of slapback. That would be like super hard to give up, that delay thing. You don't hear it when I'm playing, but I do. You know what I mean? It's not like you don't hear the echoes or anything like that. It's just like an environment that it adds. So.
Can I ask you a question? Can you do the same thing? Like I do that with a little tiny bit of tremolo.
Yeah.
Because I really like it. It's not like blah 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 blah. Just a little. It's like a delay plus maybe.
Yeah, it's just a bit of an extra vibe or something.
Yeah, I really like that.
That's all I'm doing. And with the tremolo too, I'm not like doing fast, hard, choppy tremolo. It's just some kind of movement or environment, or it's just a little seasoning that makes it a bit sexier, really.
It just gives you more color. It just it just feels like there's a little more there. I mean, you don't need it. I need it. You can play with nothing. It'll sound good. Me, not so much, but that, trust me. Influences.
Yeah.
Anybody that would be an influence of yours that people might be surprised?
The one that springs to mind always is Billy Gibbons. I'm like the biggest ZZ Top fan, and Billy's a guy, like we were talking about Buddy, is like he could come out on stage and fart at this point, as far as I'm concerned, and it would be the coolest thing. I just anything he does is cool with me.
Yeah.
I just love him. He's so soulful and cool, and those early ZZ Top records, man, the tones and the feel and the songs, and so Billy, a good friend of mine from Holland, Big Pete, amazing harmonica player, one of my favorites.
Wait a minute, you're the second guy that mentioned him to me in about 2 weeks. He used to be in the States, correct?
He was on a label over here, yeah, but he's never been based here. He's always been Dutch. He's been over back and forth. But he
older guy?
No, same age as me. We were born 2 weeks apart. So
wow, that's cool.
Big Pete and the Clown. But he was out on tour opening with the band called the Red Devils, which is an amazing blues band that the original lead singer died 20 years ago, and Pete's like the kind of the heir to the throne of this guy's style, So it was Pete fronting the original band. First time they played as the full band in 20-something years. But they were opening for ZZ Top, and I was a bit like, he was messaging me all the time, like, man, I'm so jealous you're hanging out with Billy every day. And he was saying he was as cool a guy as you would expect. So Billy's the big influence that springs to mind, that nobody ever comes up and says, oh, you sound like Billy Gibbons, but it's all in there, I can assure you, and especially in terms of vibrato and just phrasing things. And, everybody knows Stevie. I love Jimmy Vaughan as well. He's been super important. And there's a lot of blues guys that have been, like modern blues guys, that as I was coming up really held a special place for me that wouldn't be immediately obvious, but I spent a lot of time listening to guys like Chris Kane, Anson Thunderbird, Ronnie Earl, those guys that maybe don't have the immediate, unless you're real more of a blues nerd, you know,
Yes.
that don't get like talked about quite as much in guitar circles as maybe some flashier players might. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
Those guys are all really important. But then the other stuff influenced. I don't even listen to like that much guitar music all the time these days, you know. So like, I listen to a lot of non-guitar music, a lot of Oscar Peterson piano. I mean, I've tried to sit there and pull out some lines out of that. That's quite an undertaking. To try and
yeah.
But just you are what you listen to. So just listening a lot, it starts coming out, you know, in terms of his time feel and his phrasing. Oscar's, you know, really important. And like the Donny Hathaway live album I listen to with a lot of regularity, you know, hoping one day when I grow up I can sing like Donny Hathaway, you know. It's always been the full band thing as well, you know, like we talked about Russell Jackson, the bass player with BB and stuff. So I've been as much influenced by other people in the bands. All the music I love everything about it. It's one of the reasons I never was like a super big British blues fan, because the rhythm sections weren't quite as swinging to me as it was just a different feel, and it was starting to go towards rock, which is fine, but it wasn't the feel that excited me, you know, and I preferred BB's band and you know, like, or Booker T and the MGs with Albert King and stuff. So in some ways, like in terms of feels and groove and just time feels, I've been influenced by, you know, people, a lot of I love drumming. I love drummers. I wish I had a kit that I could practice on because I'm really rusty, but it's one of my favorite things. So Mitch Mitchell influenced my phrasing on guitar because I always loved the triplet fills that Mitch would play. So he would play, you know, ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba round the kit, and so I tried to transfer that into phrasing on the guitar, you know, things like that. So yeah, anything good, you know.
You know who I think never get? I mean, he's a great drummer, but I don't think he's mentioned enough. Is Ginger Baker? I mean, he's just phenomenal. The stuff he did was just, I mean, you know.
He's have you seen the documentary Beware Mr. Baker?
Phenomenal, and that's why he wasn't mentioned, because he's crazy.
Because he's a nut.
Yeah, but I mean, you know,
and he, you know, it's like he sat down at the drum kit in Cream and went, right, what can I play that is just not what anybody else would play on this tune, you know, which is super cool. I was always more of a Mitch than a Ginger guy, I will say, feel wise for myself. I'm more of a Mitch guy, and but both hugely important guys, you know, that stuff.
Speaking of music, if I asked you to pick your top 3 Desert Island discs in no particular order, and knowing that you could pick 3 different ones tomorrow, what would be your knee-jerk reaction to them right now?
Well, something BB. I have to have some BB. Probably live at Cook County at the moment. That one has been. I used to listen to it loads, and then I went through a live at the Regal phase, and now I'm back at Cook County for whatever reason.
I like Cook County better, actually. I know everybody goes gaga over live at the Regal. I was like,
yeah. The Cook County, there's some tone and some playing, a bit more playing on Cook County, and it's mostly slow blues, which is fine with me. So, and then man, it's so 3 is ridiculous.
I know. But you could change them tomorrow, though. That's a good thing.
Yeah, probably some Stevie Ray, because maybe like I do love In Step, that record, and I just, you know, it's just one of those I can just go back to it and just go, fuck yeah, that's just great, you know. There's just that's just home base for me, you know. And then I'd probably take Night Train by Oscar Peterson, which is just a wonderful record to. I know it's the obvious Oscar Peterson one, but there's a reason it's that one. It's because it's just got what you need out of Oscar Peterson, you know. So that would definitely be. There's 3 for now that would keep me ticking over for a bit. Yeah.
I have to tell you, man, your enthusiasm for all this is like really infectious. It's like really a joy to, see how excited you are over this after this many years doing it. And after, quite honestly, being beaten down, not beaten down, but beaten up. Definitely not beaten down, but beaten up in the process of trying to continue doing this, man. It's really nice.
I don't want to sound like a victim. This is all choices, things just. But the reality of the music industry for someone that's not attempting to be famous or chase that, but simply to just do exactly what you do the way you want to do it. So it's a slightly selfish endeavor in that respect. I mean, I've. It's. I
don't think selfish.
I could have made. Yeah, I just mean in terms of single-minded. And it's like I just want to do what I do. So I'm spoiled in that regard at this point. I can't. I'm happy to say that. It's No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to get a singer. I'm not going to. I'm not interested in getting together with. Writers in Nashville to like craft something a bit poppier, like many things have been suggested or presented, and it's like the more that happens, the more I just want to play some blues, It's sort of the more I get pushed, the less I'll sway, So
isn't that the way for everything,
Yeah, I think so. So I don't, so some of the beatings have been. Through choice in that respect.
Yeah,
music. I love tough. What I love, and so I'm a music lover first and foremost before I'm a musician, And when I got my new place here, I have a couch, and that's the only furniture I have in the living room, and I got a fairly nice stereo. That's why I spend my money.
Priorities, man. I hear you.
So I have the stereo in front of the nice couch, and that's it, really. So.
Hey, man, when I split up from my ex-wife many, many years ago, I took one thing, literally, my stereo. That's right. I think I might have a couple of clothes or something, but that was all I wanted, my records and my stereo.
Yeah, so
I feel you.
I can't really imagine what I would be without that. It's beyond just something I'm into. I just don't know what the world is like for me, not playing guitar or listening to music.
There's no Matt Schofield accountancy in.
It's not going to be a thing. Although we do keep talking about, I wouldn't mind having a British pub here near the beach. You'd
be a good guy.
That would be a nice alternative. I could be a landlord of a British pub here. You can come get some steak and ale pie and some sausage rolls.
And you'll always be booked from a music standpoint.
Yeah, that's right. I could do little blues gigs. I wouldn't want to deal with musicians, my God.
Hey, let me ask you 3 more questions, Matt. I appreciate all your time. You've been wonderful. First question, what's something that you have learned about yourself along this entire journey? Because it's been a long...
do you know what? That's really tricky. It's because it's... you know what? I think... I didn't even realize until people started pointing it out, but that I'm quite tough about doing it, about getting it done, and until people start saying, man, I don't know how you've just driven for 7 hours and then just played like that and stuff. And I'm not saying it to be like, wow, aren't I brilliant? But I just did it, because somebody had to do it, and then you realize. I don't know that. So I'm quite hardy. I don't, I can do what I do on not much sleep and things like that. And I never thought about it. And in some ways, I always thought that I was almost, because it wasn't a proper job.
You almost thought you were slacking.
Yeah. So I recently,
the opposite.
I've sort of learned to I suppose you say respect myself for what I actually get done, But it wasn't until other people started saying about like, holy crap, like crazy what you've just done.
Yeah.
You know, but I always, because my mum never said that I had to get a proper job. You know, she never once told me not to do this. She's quite the opposite, actually. She'd always say, you just as long as you're happy doing something that you love. So I always felt some sense of responsibility to work hard at it, you know. And I'm terrible on the business side of things. I do need help with that, and so I've learned to accept help in those areas as well, you know. But so I'm terrible at that, and I can, horrible at keeping track of accounting and things like that on the road and stuff. Because like we talked about, my brain goes in single-minded mode, of playing. But I've sort of learned to at least feel some, sense of sort of respect for myself in the getting through the grueling nature of driving around in a van, and not and learn to enjoy it almost, like I'm sort of happy when I'm killing myself doing it,
I do know.
You can enjoy your time off as well because you feel like rewarded, that you've earned it. So
good for you, man.
That's a long-winded.
Tell me something about yourself people will either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I took my girlfriend to the airport this morning. She's gone back up to New York. We should have asked that when
she was here.
She was here. She'd answer it a lot better. I'm sappiest dog guy of all time. I can't walk past a dog without saying hello to it.
Oh, really? That's cool, man. Yeah. Dogs are awesome.
Yeah, they are. They're the best. I constantly, and I can't have one at the moment. It just doesn't fit with the lifestyle that I have, So I have to live vicariously through every other dog that I meet.
Every other dog owner in the United States and around the world.
Dogs and I don't know. Yeah, you'd have to ask her about the weird stuff. I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm sure.
I always think that's a better question for the partners, man, because I would probably say not too much, but I would imagine Ann can probably lay out a list of 30 things right in about 5 minutes.
I don't doubt it. So, she calls me. She says I should have a TV show called Matt Ruins. Matt Ruins Everything. It's to do because I'm big sort of science and history and bit philosophy kind of nerd.
Yeah.
I'm not good at any. I don't profess to be an expert on any, but I'm fascinated by it, and I'm always interested in, what we know to the best of our knowledge about anything. So I tend to retain lots of useless facts in that regard. So she'll be like, "Oh, this is great," and so I'll be, "Well, actually,
okay. So this is why it won't work because
exactly.
The temperature of water, you see, is higher than what they're saying. Yeah.
Well, actually, and my mum and my sister would also back her up on that. So I'm kind of the Mr. Skeptic, Mr. Rational in that regard.
You know what? I've spoken to several guys that are really into science and history, philosophy, stuff like that. You're not the only guy. Yeah, I like science myself. No.
It's kind of, for some reason, it fits with the guitar for me as well. Like we were talking about how I just kind of could play, not great, but I could just do it because there was like the logic of the instrument just made sense to me. You know. So a logical brain, in my respect, seems to work pretty good. But I'm interested in the truth about things, and that's the blues is a lot about people's experiences, and it's the sincerity of the music and the sincerity of the performance, particularly in improvised solo, or the self-expression element is very you have to be very truthful to sound legit. You got to put it out there when you play. You have to show yourself, and so I'm interested in the truth. So I think I find that interesting in in the scientific side of things, because just the ongoing process of learning more about things. But as I say, to the best of so I try not to be discounting of other possibilities or what other people, the way other people might see things, if you see what I mean. But there is sort of fundamental truths about certain things that we know, and so that side sort of fascinates me, and it fits with the whole thing. Maybe that doesn't make sense to some people, that blues is kind of blues and science.
Blues is the truth, man. Blues is the truth, 100%.
And like it or not, so is certainly the process of scientific discovery. That's what it's aiming for in its purest form. So yeah, I dig all of that, and
I do smell reality show here with science and blues, man.
Yeah, it's either that or we've talked about doing band in a van for quite a while, which would definitely have a different angle.
Yeah.
4 guys driving around in a van for 6 weeks and put some GoPros on the inside and stream it. I think people would probably tune into that more, but in your classic reality TV mold. But yeah, so dogs, science, history, and cars is the other one. So I like cars. So.
Very cool, man. Last question, Matt. Over the last 10 years, what do you think's been your biggest change in your personality, and how much of that change has been deliberate and intentional, and how much of that has been just natural process of aging?
I think I don't know. Again, it's a good and tricky question. I'm crankier than I used to be.
Really?
Probably slightly less patient, maybe. But not to people. I try and be. Somebody asked what my motto was last year at a gig. Could I write my motto?
Your motto.
Yeah, on when I was signing the CD, and can you?
Oh, yeah.
To each of the band members, write your motto and sign it. And I was like, try not to be an asshole.
Try not to be a dick.
Because having toured and been in lots of situations in close quarters with people for long periods of time over the years and stuff like that, sometimes you're like, I don't want to be that guy. Yeah. So yeah. And it always goes back to B.B. King. Still same thing, because he was like 85 when I got to spend some time with him at a festival, and he was so gracious. And they wheeled him in a wheelchair, and and they took him up to the edge of the stage in a wheelchair, and then just to where the audience couldn't see, and then he hoisted himself up out of the wheelchair, and I was watching him. It seemed to take forever for him to get up, and then the minute he crosses the threshold of the wing of the stage, he does a little dance and he goes out there and he does his gig. And I watched that, and I think perhaps my manager at the time or somebody had got word to him that I had played earlier and he was my hero. And, he sent for me to come and say hi,
It's so cool.
He didn't have to do that. And so somebody comes running over, goes, BB wants to meet you, he didn't know I was before that. But, so in terms of being cranky or not being an asshole, it goes back to him. So, sometimes I don't want to go to the merch stand when I've finished the gig, because it's the first time I've had to myself for maybe 20 hours or something,
Sure.
But I think of BB and think he took that time. He was way more tired at 85 after 60 years on the road.
Yeah.
300 nights a year than I'll ever know about. And so I try and keep that at bay, being cranky and stuff. But yeah, you just, your patience does wear a little bit when you encounter the same kind of errors or incompetencies or mistakes with your job, like on an ongoing basis. For
you mean mistakes with performance of other guys, or just like shit you got to deal with, like from clubs, or
shit you've got to deal with
from fans being inappropriate once in a while, or
shit you've got to and that's. I again don't want to get back into a negative slant or appear to be criticizing anybody, but things have changed with the advent of social media as to how fans interact with artists. I've noticed that observation, definitely. I mean, people
like put their arm around you and like just automatically reach for the selfie, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of unexpected expectation of intimacy, there's a familiarity. So there's more over familiarity than before. People sometimes get annoyed that I don't remember them.
Sorry, man. You're kidding me. From when? From last month or last year when you?
Like 2 years ago or something. They get a bit pissy.
Really?
When we met, and it's like, you know how many people I meet a year?
Wow.
Yeah, so because they left a message on Facebook page earlier, so there's you
should turn around and go, Russell? No, I thought you were like you should just like have a stock name that you call everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
This way you could be like,
so that stuff's tricky. So then you try and be like, okay, their world is different than mine, and so and they mean well, they're excited. But I get people yelling out, like, in the middle of a gig between songs, like, hey, man, what pickups you got in that guitar? In the middle of the song, somebody shouted that out. And I'm like, or in the middle of between the tunes while I'm trying to introduce the next tune. And I'm like,
Duncan's. I know.
Like, what is this, like the Facebook comment section on a gig? But
that's so funny.
It's like, no, you are not.
Yeah, I think that you know what? That's an interesting point, and I see it a lot. And I hate to sound like old, but I see that a lot with younger people because they grow up with, the scroll and the interaction more has been, more social interaction has come from interacting through a computer than actually like in person.
Yeah, the boundaries are in a different place,
Yeah, and I think the awkward level is higher just because it's not there, and and it's talking on a computer is different.
It is.
I mean, listen, you're a easygoing guy. We get along good, but when we saw each other in person, it's going to be like a 5-minute detox till we first.
Sure,
you got to feel the energy, man. And we can stay out here and be best buddies for hours, but it's different when you're in person. You just got to feel the energy, and by the end of a drink, everything's cool. But that interaction component is missing, and you're not getting a chance to feel that energy and learn from it. Learn the other people's boundaries and comforts. I think is a bit of a problem.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a bit of a difficulty from the perspective of what it's like to be on the receiving end of certain things. Like when I go to the NAMM show, and I mean, I can walk around there without getting bothered all the time. It's not that I'm famous, but there are people that then want, but I'm not also, important or famous enough to need like an entourage of buffers around, like someone who's really famous, because people don't go to an Eric Clapton gig and expect to meet Eric Clapton at all. Do you know what I mean? He's not coming out.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do now.
Maybe they do now, but certainly when I used to go when I was
of course, any gig.
And anyone, we'd wait by the stage door maybe to catch them on the way out and just say thanks very much, and maybe dare to ask to get the album signed or some, but maybe not. And if they didn't, then it was just so those boundaries are completely different now.
Yeah,
but the weird thing, like at the NAMM show, is I get like what I've termed like face blindness, where there's so many people coming at you at some point saying hello that you don't know who they are. There's been times I've had to look at the person that I do know who they are. Like I've known them for years, and they're at least a strong acquaintance, you know. And it takes me a second then to my brain is overwhelmed by faces coming at me saying hello Matt, and
well, you have to go through the catalog in your head. It's like literally a Rolodex floating around there, and you're waiting to select the ticker. Yeah, I get that.
I remember having a guy and Dan Steinhardt from the Pedal Show. I think it was like last year, and I'm talking to Mick from the Pedal Show, and then Dan stood there, and I'm like, oh fuck, Dan, yes, of course that's you next. I've known him for years, but it just hadn't registered, you know. And I've had a beer with this guy a bunch of times, you know. It's like so that stuff's crazy. I don't know how we got on to discussing that, but those are things that I noticed. That's why I'm like, man, this is the stuff that you never expected to be something to deal with, you know. So
are you going to be there this year?
Probably.
I'm going to scream your name out like across the room, like,
yeah,
Matt.
Yeah, and you know, and it's funny because I was in the bathroom queue there, and this guy is like, "Hey man," I'm like, "How you doing?" He goes, "Yeah." He was one of the ones actually recently that was like, "Wait, you know, we met last year." You know, I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of, you know, like that." So I'm still in the queue, and then this other guy goes, "Hey Matt," and I'm like, "Yeah, how you doing, mate?" Sort of doing. And he goes, "No, I'm just kidding. I don't know who you are. I just saw that." I was like, "Oh, great!" So now people are pretending to do it just to wind me up. I'm like, "Oh, this is the craziest." I mean, the NAMM show's bonkers, isn't it? You know, so. I mean, if I've not got a gig, I'm there, you know, because ironically, it's nice to see people that I only get to see once a year at the NAMM show.
If you finally figure out who the hell they are.
Yeah, exactly. It'll take me 30 seconds of staring at you to go, oh, I know you. Yeah.
So Matt will pay $5 to every person that does not come up and say hello to him at his gigs.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I don't want to sound ungrateful, because that's why, like, going back to BB, he took the time, I take the time, and I'm just so honored that anybody would ever give a shit that they want to come say hello, let alone get a picture taken or get a signature, you know? So you try and remember that side. So I guess I'm just saying...
No, but there's a difference between saying hello, getting a picture, and then, like, getting annoyed because you don't remember them. That's a little... I mean, that's just
just give me a break on that side of things, you know? I'll be as nice as you are to me, you know. So.
He's becoming Americanized.
Yeah.
Hey man, I can't thank you enough for everything. I want to talk about where people can find you. First of all, it's mattschofield.com. If you've never seen Matt play, please go out and check him out at a gig. At a minimum, go listen to him online on YouTube. He's a brilliant, very soulful blues guitarist, and he does tell the truth. And his last name is spelled S-C-H, so it's Matt, M-A-T-T-S-C-H-O-F-I-E-L-D, mattschofield.com. He's also on Facebook and Instagram. He's doing a pretty big gig with David Grissom and Jeff McErlane in Italy on June 21st and June 22nd. You want to talk about that, Matt?
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. A couple of favorite guitar players of mine, and my band, my trio, backing everybody up on both the days. So it's going to be just, and it's really nice there in Umbria in Italy. It's like one of the most beautiful parts of Italy in the world. So even if you're not from there, I could highly recommend a weekend in Umbria for the food and the scenery and the music. So.
And some great selfie shots there too.
Oh yeah.
And he'll also be in Greece is that Greece, right? Corfu,
yeah, the Corfu Rock School. So that's another one. Then, if you don't make it to Italy for your holiday in June, come to Corfu for a week right by the beach. I'll be teaching, and then we'll be jamming in the evening, and so it's kind of a full sort of camp vacation / resort / learning experience, so really nice on that, and that'll be my first time in Greece as well, so looking forward to that.
And that's July 17th to the 24th. Is information, if somebody wants to book any of these events, is that on your website, or where do they go?
Yeah, it should all link through to from the events on the gigs page. It'll take you to the website of the event. So,
awesome. And again, check that out on mattschofield.com. It's SCHOFIELD. Man, I can't thank you enough. You're a hell of a nice guy, and man, I wish you nothing but tons of success here. I'm looking forward to coming out and seeing you play. Maybe you coming over to Tampa?
I hope so. I've only been. Well, we did the Blues Festival last year, actually. But
play Skippers. It's a pretty cool venue.
I did Skippers once, yeah, but I haven't been back. They didn't know me over there so much at that point, so I'll have to give it another try. I was
just there this weekend. Do you know Sean Chambers?
Yeah. I not personally. I know of him, and I think quite possibly Jay, my manager, has been involved with bookings or something at some point with Sean. Good player.
Real good player. He was there last weekend. Hey man, thank you for your time. Thanks for everything. And everybody, please check Matt out. Can't thank you enough for everything, man. You're awesome. And everybody, thanks so much for listening. Please check out Matt Schofield online, and please check him out and support him at his gigs. He's honestly a great blues player, man. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks so much to Matt for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified about future episodes, along with some early product announcements and discounts. And this is really important. Remember that happiness is a choice, man. So choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, and I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.